A cruise ship, a honeymoon. A time of celebration, of new beginnings. For Janelle, Thompson and Daman, it was the promise of forever, a journey across the Mediterranean, filled with laughter, breathtaking views, and the quiet assurance that their love was unshakable. Aboard the Ocean Majesty, a floating palace on endless blue waters, their future stretched before them like the horizon. The deck shimmered beneath golden sunsets, the sea breeze carried their laughter, and each destination brought with it a new chapter in their story. Marseille. Santorini. The dream unfolded perfectly. Or so it seemed. In the carefully curated memories of their honeymoon, something was out of place. At first, it was nothing more than a whisper in the back of Janelle's mind, a subtle shift in the air, a glance that lingered too long, a conversation that ended the moment she approached, a silence that wasn't just quiet, it was deliberate. And then, the blonde woman. She moved through the ship with an elegance that made her impossible to ignore. Not loud, not demanding attention, yet somehow, always there. Janelle noticed her first at dinner. The soft flicker of candlelight reflecting in her glass as she lifted it to her lips. The way Daman's posture changed, just slightly, the moment she entered the room. A coincidence, surely. Except it wasn't. The next day, Janelle caught it again, Daman's eyes, tracking her. A subtle tension in his jaw whenever the woman walked by. The way he seemed to know exactly where she was, even when he wasn't looking. Janelle told herself it was nothing. She had to. This was their honeymoon. A time for joy, not doubt. But doubt has a way of finding its way in. It was in the moments that didn't make sense. The way Daman's demeanor shifted. The hesitation when she asked simple questions. The late-night strolls. The hushed tones of conversations that stopped just before she entered the room. And then, the night everything changed. A quiet evening. A breeze rolling in from the open sea. The distant hum of music from the ship's grand ballroom. They had been walking along the deck, hand in hand, but Janelle felt it. His mind was somewhere else. Or perhaps, with someone else. The argument started small. A misplaced comment. A question Daman refused to answer. But it grew. The tension no longer beneath the surface, but out in the open. A pause. A look in his eyes that Janelle had never seen before. And then, he walked away. She watched him disappear into the crowd, her heart pounding. For the first time, she felt alone. But she wouldn't be alone for long. Because within hours, Janelle Thompson was gone. Not just missing. Gone. No trace. No sign of struggle. Just vanished. Her husband, frantic. Security, alerted. Passengers whispering. Where was Janelle? What happened after that argument? And why did the cameras catch something that raised even more questions? Footage, just blurry enough to cast doubt. A woman, a figure similar to Janelle's, moving toward the lower decks. But was it really her? And if it was, where was she going? And then, a discovery. One that changed everything. A key card. A name that should not have been on the ship's guest list. And a truth Daman was never prepared to face. This wasn't just a honeymoon anymore. It was something else entirely. And when the truth came to light, it would leave everyone asking, who really was Janelle Thompson? And why did she disappear? The Ocean Majesty, a grand floating sanctuary, a masterpiece of elegance and indulgence. With its gleaming white decks stretching endlessly beneath the Mediterranean sun, the ship was a world unto itself. A place where time slowed, worries faded, and every horizon promised adventure. For Janelle Thompson and Daman, it was more than a cruise. It was the culmination of years of love, of whispered promises, of a future carefully built, together. Newlyweds. Bound not just by vows, but by the quiet certainty that they had found their person. There forever. Janelle, vibrant and full of life, had always believed in love. She was thoughtful, intuitive, the kind of woman who noticed the little things. The way a person's voice changed when they were nervous. The slight hesitation before a carefully chosen word. She believed in trusting her instincts. And Daman. Daman was charming, magnetic in a way that made people gravitate toward him. He had a presence that filled a room without needing to say a word. Janelle loved that about him. The way he could make her feel like the only person in the world. Their honeymoon was everything they had imagined. Sun-drenched mornings on the private deck of their suite. Long, lazy afternoons exploring the historic streets of Marseille, fingers intertwined, stealing kisses beneath the shadow of ancient cathedrals. Evenings filled with candlelit dinners, the soft clinking of champagne glasses, and the distant hum of waves lapping against the hull of the ship. Everything was perfect. Almost too perfect. It started subtly. A flicker of something beneath the surface. A feeling Janelle couldn't quite name. At first, she dismissed it. Daman was happy. They were happy. But then, there were the glances. Quick, almost imperceptible. But there. A shift in his focus. A hesitation before answering simple questions. And always, toward her. The blonde woman. She wasn't striking in an obvious way, but there was something about her. The way she carried herself, poised, deliberate, moving through the ship's corridors like she belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. She was never too close. Never too far. Janelle first noticed her at dinner. The woman was seated 2 tables away, alone. She never looked directly at them, but Janelle caught it, the flicker of recognition in her eyes. Like she knew them, or knew something about them. Daman, usually attentive, had been distracted that night. His responses were slower, his mind somewhere else. And then, there was the moment Janelle couldn't ignore. The woman stood, gathering her things. Daman shifted, just slightly. And for the briefest moment, their eyes met. Not in passing. Not by accident. A moment of familiarity. It was small, but to Janelle, it was everything. She let it pass. Forced herself to. This was their honeymoon. She wasn't going to ruin it over a feeling. But the feeling didn't leave. And neither did the woman. She was there the next day. By the pool, lounging as Daman walked past. Near the casino, sipping a drink as Janelle and Daman wandered through the room. On the observation deck, watching the sunset, alone. And each time, Daman noticed her. He never spoke to her. Never acknowledged her. But he noticed. And that, Janelle realized, was worse. That night, as they returned to their cabin, Janelle finally asked, "Do you know her?" Daman barely looked up from unbuttoning his shirt. "Who?" Janelle didn't answer. She didn't need to. She saw the way his hands slowed, just slightly. The way he kept his back turned. She waited. "No," he said finally. Too quickly. Too easily. And just like that, the perfect honeymoon didn't feel so perfect anymore. Still, she tried to shake it off. Maybe she was overthinking. Maybe it was nothing. The next morning, as they docked in Santorini, Janelle let herself believe that. She had always wanted to see this place. Whitewashed houses perched high on the cliffs, cascading down to the deep blue sea. Streets lined with cafes, the scent of fresh pastries and sea salt drifting through the warm air. For a while, she forgot. They wandered hand in hand through the narrow alleyways, stopping for pictures, laughter spilling effortlessly between them. They found a small restaurant overlooking the caldera, sharing plates of fresh seafood and clinking glasses of chilled white wine. For a while, Janelle let herself believe they were exactly where they were meant to be. But then, she saw her. Not across the restaurant. Not at another table. But outside. Across the street. Watching. Not hiding. Not pretending to be anywhere else. Just watching. Janelle's stomach turned. And when she looked back at Daman, she saw it again. That flicker of something she couldn't ignore. That night, back on the ship, she didn't ask again. She didn't need to. Because now, she knew. Something wasn't right. And she wasn't imagining it. The honeymoon wasn't over yet. But something else was. Janelle tried to push the feeling away. The doubt. The creeping uncertainty that had begun to gnaw at the edges of her thoughts. This was her honeymoon. She had married the love of her life. This was supposed to be the happiest time of their lives. But happiness should never feel like a performance. Daman was changing. At first, it was subtle, small things that could have been dismissed as nothing. The way he checked his phone more often, even when they were in the middle of a conversation. The way he would glance around the ship, like he was looking for someone. And then, there were the conversations. Janelle saw him with her. Lena Volova. She didn't hear the words, but she saw the way Daman leaned in. The way he lowered his voice, his body language guarded, almost tense. And Lena, she was calm. Too calm. Janelle wasn't the jealous type. She never had been. But something about this wasn't normal. That night, she tried to ignore it. They had dinner reservations at one of the ship's finest restaurants. A perfect evening. Or at least, it should have been. The dining hall shimmered under the golden glow of chandeliers, the gentle sound of a live violinist filling the air. Couples leaned in close over candlelit tables, whispers of love and laughter weaving through the atmosphere. But at their table, there was silence. Daman sat across from Janelle, his fingers tracing the rim of his wine glass, his gaze distant. She waited. And waited. Finally, she said his name. softly at first. Daman. His eyes flicked up, startled, like he had forgotten she was there. She forced a smile. You're quiet. Just tired, he muttered, picking up his fork. A lie. His shoulders were tense, his posture slightly rigid, small details, but to Janelle, they spoke volumes. And then, something happened that made her heart stop. Lena entered the restaurant. Daman noticed immediately. It was a fraction of a second, his gaze shifting, his fingers tightening ever so slightly around his fork. But Janelle saw it. And suddenly, she couldn't eat. She put down her fork, her appetite gone, her stomach twisting itself into knots. Who is she? Daman barely looked up. Who? Janelle didn't blink. The woman. The one you were talking to earlier. He sighed, running a hand over his face. Janelle, please. I don't know her. Then why were you talking to her? Daman set his glass down, the sound sharp against the table. Can we not do this? His voice was lower now, almost a plea. Janelle didn't respond. Because now, she knew. This wasn't nothing. This wasn't paranoia. There was something he wasn't telling her. And she was going to find out what. That night, after Daman had fallen asleep, Janelle lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Her mind raced. She had always trusted him. But now, there was doubt. And doubt had a way of becoming something dangerous. Quietly, carefully, she slid out of bed. She didn't know what she was looking for. She just knew she had to look. She picked up Daman's phone. Locked. Of course. She placed it back exactly where it was and turned toward the door. A part of her hesitated. Was she really going to do this? Sneak around after her own husband? She took a deep breath and stepped out into the hall. The ship was quiet at this hour. Most guests had retired to their cabins, the once bustling corridors now empty, the only sound the distant hum of the ocean beneath them. She didn't have a plan. Not until she saw him. Daman. Walking away from their room. Alone. Janelle froze. She should have turned back. But she didn't. She followed him. Carefully. Quietly. Through the long, winding corridors. Down a flight of stairs. And then, out onto the lower deck. She stopped in the shadows, just out of sight. Daman stood there, facing the railing. Waiting. A moment later, she appeared. Lena. Janelle's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't hear their words, but she saw the way they stood close. Too close. Lena placed a hand on Daman's arm. He didn't pull away. Janelle's chest tightened. And then, Daman leaned in. Whispered something. Lena nodded. And just like that, the walls around Janelle's world began to crack. She had seen enough. Heart pounding, she turned and walked away. Fast. She needed answers. Now, back in their cabin, she sat on the edge of the bed, waiting. She didn't know how long it was before Daman returned. But when he did, she was ready. The door closed behind him. Silence. Then, where were you? Daman froze. For a brief moment, he didn't answer. And that silence told Janelle everything. Finally, he sighed. I went for a walk. A walk, she repeated, her voice hollow. Yes. She let the lie hang between them. Did you see her? Daman's face didn't change. But she saw it, the flicker of hesitation in his eyes. No, he said. And just like that, something inside her snapped. I followed you. Silence. She watched as the lie unraveled in real time. The shift in his stance. The tightening of his jaw. Janelle. Who is she? Her voice was sharp now, cutting through the tension like a blade. Daman's hands curled into fists. She's nobody. Another lie. Janelle stood. Don't do that, she said, voice shaking. Don't lie to me. He exhaled, rubbing his temples. You're overthinking this. Janelle let out a hollow laugh. Overthinking. She shook her head. Daman, I watched you whisper to her. I watched you let her touch you. He opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time, he looked nervous. Janelle took a step closer. What aren't you telling me? Daman didn't answer. And that was the moment Janelle realized. She wasn't just questioning her marriage anymore. She was questioning everything. And the worst part, she wasn't sure she wanted the truth. Because something told her. She wouldn't like what she found. The walls of their cabin felt smaller that night. Janelle stood near the bed, arms crossed, her heart pounding against her ribcage. Across from her, Daman stood stiffly, his face set in a mask of forced indifference. But the tension between them was razor sharp. She had pushed for answers. Daman had refused to give them. Now, the air between them was thick with words unspoken, words neither was ready to say. Janelle's voice was low, edged with something dangerous. I know you're lying to me, Daman. He let out a slow exhale, running a hand over his face. Janelle, you're being ridiculous. She took a step closer. No. What's ridiculous is you sneaking around with another woman and expecting me to pretend like I don't see it. Daman's eyes darkened. I told you, Lena is nobody. Janelle let out a hollow laugh. Nobody, she echoed. Then why do I keep seeing you with her? Why were you whispering to her? Why did you look like you were hiding something? Daman clenched his jaw, his fists tightening at his sides. You're imagining things. No, I'm not. Janelle shot back, her voice rising. I watched you. I followed you. And you lied to me. Daman's expression flickered for a moment, just a moment, before he turned away. That's it, he muttered. I can't do this. Janelle felt something cold settle in her stomach. What does that mean? She demanded. Daman rubbed his temples. It means I need space. I'm going for a walk. And just like that, he grabbed his jacket and stormed out of the cabin. Janelle stood there, heart racing, fists trembling. She had expected a fight. She hadn't expected him to leave. She turned toward the window, staring out at the endless stretch of black ocean beyond. The ship rocked gently beneath her feet. A strange feeling settled over her. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. And she had no idea that by morning, she would be gone. The next time Daman opened his eyes, the room was too quiet. He blinked, adjusting to the darkness. The bed beside him was empty. Frowning, he sat up, rubbing his face. Janelle. Silence. A cold trickle of unease ran down his spine. He checked the bathroom. Empty. The balcony. Nothing. His pulse quickened. Maybe she had gone for a walk, like he had. Maybe she just needed space. But then, he saw something that made his stomach drop. Her purse. Her phone. Her shoes. All still in the cabin. Daman swallowed, a thin film of sweat forming on his brow. She wouldn't have left without these. Something was wrong. Heart hammering, he threw on a jacket and stepped out into the hallway. The corridors were eerily quiet at this hour. Only the low hum of the ship's engine filled the empty space. Daman moved quickly, checking the upper decks, the dining area, even the lounge where they had spent time just days ago. Nothing. He flagged down a crew member, voice tight with panic. My wife. I can't find her. The crew member frowned. Sir, are you sure she isn't in your cabin? I already checked. Daman's voice was shaking now. She's gone. The staffer's expression shifted. Concern. Professionalism. I'll notify security. Minutes later, ship security was involved. A formal search began. Staff combed through the decks, checking hallways, public areas, and even crew-only zones. No one had seen Janelle. Not since late last night. Then, CCTV footage. Daman stood stiffly as security reviewed the grainy black and white footage from the ship's security cameras. And then, there she was. Janelle. Walking alone. 2:37 a.m. She was barefoot, wearing only her nightgown. Her movements were slow, almost dazed. She headed toward the lower decks, the area reserved for maintenance, where passengers weren't supposed to be. And then, she disappeared. Gone. No footage showed her coming back up. No footage showed her leaving. It was like she had vanished into thin air. Daman's hands curled into fists. That doesn't make sense, he whispered. She wouldn't go down there alone. She wouldn't. The lead security officer's expression was unreadable. We're checking all restricted areas. But I have to ask, he hesitated. Did she seem upset before she disappeared? Daman's throat tightened. Their fight. The accusations. The way she had looked at him before he walked out. She was fine, he lied. By mid-morning, whispers had spread. A missing woman. A vanished bride. Crew's guests murmured in hushed voices, their eyes lingering on Daman as he paced the ship, waiting for answers. And then, a name surfaced. Lena Valova. The last person seen near the couple's cabin. The woman Janelle had feared. The woman Daman had lied about. She was found near the ship's sun deck, sipping a cocktail as if nothing had happened. When security approached, she simply raised an eyebrow. Yes. The officer crossed his arms. Where were you last night? Lena's lips curled into a slow smile. Sleeping. Daman stared at her, his blood running cold. He could feel something in the air. Something he didn't understand. Something dark. And then, Lena looked at him, and her smile widened. You seem nervous, she said softly. Daman's breath hitched. Because in that moment, he realized something. Lena Valova wasn't just some woman. She was something much worse. And now, Janelle was gone. And nobody knew where she was. Or if she was even alive. The security office aboard the Ocean Majesty was small, cold, and sterile. Daman sat rigid in a chair, his hands clenched into fists on his lap. Across from him, the head of ship security, Officer Martin Hayes, flipped through a thin file, his expression unreadable. Outside, the ship moved through the water, a seemingly peaceful voyage. But inside this small room, nothing was peaceful. Janelle was still missing. The questions had only just begun. Hayes looked up, his sharp eyes locking onto Daman. "Mr. Carter, you said you didn't see your wife after 11 p.m. Daman's throat was dry. "That's right. And when you woke up, she was gone." "Yes." Hayes exhaled slowly, leaning back in his chair. "We've reviewed the security footage," he said, "and we've spoken to several passengers." Daman's pulse quickened. "What did you find?" Hayes didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned toward his assistant, who placed a small plastic evidence bag on the table. Inside, a key card, a cloned one. Daman's brow furrowed. "What is that?" Hayes laced his fingers together. "We found this in Lena Valova's cabin." Daman stiffened. A cloned key card. It wasn't just a spare room key. It was a duplicate. A way to enter someone else's cabin undetected. Hayes let the silence hang before he spoke again. "This card was programmed to access your cabin, Mr. Carter." Daman's breath hitched. His mind raced. What does that mean?" Hayes' gaze was piercing. "It means someone, Lena, or someone working with her, had access to your room." Daman's heartbeat thundered in his ears. Janelle had suspected something. She had felt something. And now, she was gone. Lena Valova sat calmly in the interrogation room. A picture of poise. Unbothered. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a sleek ponytail, her red lips curved in a slight smile. She didn't look worried. She didn't even look curious. Hayes studied her. Then, he slid the evidence bag across the table. Her eyes flickered toward it, and then back to him. No reaction. Hayes leaned forward. "Why was this key in your cabin?" Lena tilted her head. "I don't know," she said smoothly. Hayes' jaw tightened. "You expect me to believe that?" Lena let out a soft laugh. "You can believe whatever you like." Silence. Then, Hayes pulled out a folder. Inside, photos, witness reports, testimonies. He spread them across the table. "We spoke to several passengers," he said. "They saw you speaking to Janelle." Lena's smile didn't fade. And my question is, why?" Lena leaned back, crossing her arms. "She approached me," she said simply. "That was new." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "She did." Lena nodded. "A few days ago. She wanted to know something." "What?" Lena's eyes darkened. "She asked me about you," she said, glancing toward the observation window where Daman stood, watching. Daman felt the air leave his lungs. Hayes barely reacted. "What did she want to know?" Lena let the silence stretch. Then, with a slow smirk, "She wanted to know who I really was." Daman's mind was unraveling. Nothing made sense. Janelle had spoken to Lena. Why hadn't she told him? Had she known something he didn't? Was that why she had been acting so differently? And then, a knock at the door. Officer Hayes turned. His assistant entered, holding another file. "I ran the background check you requested," the assistant said. "And I found something." Hayes took the file, flipping it open. And just like that, everything changed. Janelle wasn't just a newlywed. She had a past. A past she hadn't told Daman about. A past that was on this ship. "His name is Mark Evans," Hayes said. Daman stared. The name meant nothing to him. "Who is he?" Hayes hesitated. Then, he was Janelle's ex-husband. Daman felt his stomach drop. No, that wasn't possible. Janelle had never mentioned an ex-husband. Hayes continued. They were married 5 years ago. Briefly. Ended in a messy divorce. Daman's head was spinning. "But, what does this have to do with?" Hayes held up a hand. "We're not done." He tapped the file. "Mark Evans has a criminal record." Daman went still. "What?" Hayes nodded grimly. "Arrested multiple times. Fraud. Identity theft. And," he glanced up, "he was investigated for domestic violence." Daman's breath caught in his throat. "What are you saying?" Hayes' next words sent ice through his veins. "I'm saying that Mark Evans is on this cruise." Daman's world tilted. His pulse roared in his ears. This wasn't just about Lena. This wasn't just about a missing wife. This was bigger, darker. And suddenly, Daman had a terrible feeling that he wasn't the only one looking for Janelle. Daman Carter stood frozen in the dimly lit interrogation room. His mind was a storm, a hurricane of confusion, betrayal, and disbelief. Lena Volova sat across from him, her gaze steady, her expression unreadable. Moments ago, she had dropped a bombshell. Janelle's ex-husband, Mark Evans, had been blackmailing her. Blackmail? Why? What did Mark know that was worth keeping hidden? Daman swallowed hard, forcing his voice to steady. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. "What could Mark possibly have on Janelle?" Lena leaned forward, her blue eyes cold as ice. He knew who she really was. Daman's pulse thundered in his ears. "She was running from him, Daman," Lena continued. "That's why she never told you about him. She was afraid." Afraid. The word hit him like a fist to the gut. His Janelle. The woman he had married. The woman he had promised to love, honor, and protect. She had been living in fear. And she had never told him. Daman clenched his fists. Afraid of what? Lena hesitated. Then, she reached into her bag, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and slid it across the table. Daman's hands trembled as he picked it up. The paper was old, yellowed at the edges. A document. A birth certificate. The name at the top. Not Janelle Thompson, but a different name entirely. A male name. Daman's world tilted. His vision blurred. The document slipped from his fingers and fluttered to the table. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Lena's voice was soft. She was born as Jeremy Thomas. Silence. Daman felt his breath hitch. Everything inside him recoiled. No. Lena sighed. She transitioned years ago. Before you met her. Before she became the Janelle you knew. Daman's stomach twisted. The memories, every touch, every kiss, every whispered "I love you." Had it all been a lie? Had she been a lie? His hands curled into fists. Why didn't she tell me? His voice cracked, raw with emotion. Lena exhaled. She was going to. Daman's breath caught. She planned to tell you on this trip, Lena continued. That's why Mark came after her. He knew. He always knew. And he wanted to make sure she paid for keeping it a secret. Daman shook his head, his mind fighting against the truth. But we got married, he whispered. How could she hide something like this? Why would she? Lena's gaze softened for the first time. Because she loved you. The words hit harder than any punch. Daman's chest tightened. Janelle, his wife, had spent their entire relationship keeping this secret. Not because she wanted to deceive him, but because she was terrified of what would happen if she didn't. Daman swallowed back the bile rising in his throat. The air felt thick, suffocating. He needed space. He needed to think. He pushed back his chair abruptly, the legs screeching against the floor. I need to go, he muttered. Lena didn't stop him. As he stormed out of the room, one thought pounded in his skull. Where was Janelle? And had she disappeared to escape Mark? Or had someone made sure she never got the chance to tell the truth? The air on the ship had never felt colder. Daman had stormed away from Lena, his mind spinning, his heart shattered into a million pieces. The truth about Janelle, his wife, his love, had torn through him like a jagged blade. He had trusted her. He had stood by her through everything, never questioning her, never doubting her. But now, he was left with a crushing realization. She had been hiding something monumental, something that had shattered the very foundation of their marriage. As the hours passed, Daman's fury grew. The anger didn't just stem from the revelation of Janelle's past. It stemmed from the feeling of betrayal, the deep, aching betrayal of the woman he had spent his life with. How could she have kept this from him? How could she have lied to him about something so fundamental, so life-altering? It wasn't just about the secret. It was about everything that had come before. Every intimate moment, every whispered promise, every shared dream, had all been built on a lie. Daman couldn't stop the torrent of emotions that flooded him. He was enraged. He was broken. But above all, he felt powerless. And that, perhaps, was the worst feeling of all. It was late in the evening, the ship gliding through the calm Mediterranean waters. Daman found himself standing near the edge of the deck, staring into the vast, dark expanse of the ocean. The water stretched out infinitely before him, its surface like a mirror, reflecting the fractured pieces of his own soul. He had been told that Janelle was somewhere on the ship, hidden away, in a place she felt safe. But no one had seen her for hours. No one knew where she had gone. Daman had to find her. He had to confront her. His thoughts were a blur, but there was one thing he was sure of. He needed answers. He didn't care what happened next. The door to their cabin slammed open with a force that echoed through the quiet corridor. Janelle was there, standing in front of the bed, her back to him. Her blonde hair was messily tied back, her face pale, eyes swollen from crying. She had been hiding, but she couldn't hide anymore. Daman's breath was ragged as he stood in the doorway, his chest heaving. The anger coursed through his veins, burning brighter than the sorrow and confusion that had plagued him for the past few days. Janelle slowly turned, her eyes wide with shock. She didn't speak at first. She couldn't. Daman stepped into the room, his fists clenched by his sides. His entire body trembled with the weight of the moment. "How could you?" he whispered, the words barely leaving his mouth. Janelle swallowed, her eyes filling with tears. "Daman, No!" Daman shouted, cutting her off. "You lied to me. You kept this from me. You made me believe in something that was never real." Janelle's lip trembled. She took a step toward him, but Daman backed away, shaking his head violently. "You're not who I thought you were," he spat, his voice rising with every word. "You're not the woman I married. You lied. You deceived me. You." The rage overtook him. He felt like he was drowning, like the walls were closing in, like the air was too thick to breathe. His hands reached for the gun he had kept hidden in his jacket pocket, the gun he had taken from the ship's security office earlier that day. Janelle's eyes widened in terror as Daman pointed the weapon at her. "Please, Daman," she whispered, stepping back. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to." "Shut up," Daman screamed. Without another word, his finger tightened on the trigger. The sound of the gunshot echoed in the small cabin. Janelle's body jerked back, her hand instinctively reaching for her chest. A second shot rang out, then a third. Daman's breathing was shallow, his mind unable to fully process what was happening. The fourth shot followed. A fifth. Silence. Janelle collapsed to the floor, her eyes wide open, her mouth agape in shock, her body lying still in a pool of crimson. Daman stood over her, his gun still raised, his heart pounding in his chest. He hadn't meant this. He hadn't meant to kill her. But the rage, the betrayal, the fury had consumed him. Within moments, ship security stormed into the cabin. Daman was immediately restrained, his hands forced behind his back. He was dragged out of the room, his eyes locked on the lifeless body of the woman he had loved. The crew moved quickly, but it was too late. Janelle Thompson, the woman Daman had married, the woman who had kept her secrets for so long, was gone. The investigation moved quickly in the wake of the tragedy. Daman was arrested on the spot and placed under strict surveillance. Witnesses came forward, recounting the tense moments before the shooting, the growing tension between Daman and Janelle. But no one knew just how deep the pain ran inside of Daman, how fragile his mind had become under the weight of betrayal and confusion. The trial would come, of course. The legal system would take its course, but nothing could bring Janelle back. Nothing could undo the damage that had been done. Daman's trial was a media frenzy. The public couldn't get enough of the details, couldn't get enough of the tragedy. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension. Daman sat at the defense table, his face gaunt, his eyes hollow from the torment that had ravaged him. He was guilty. He knew it. He had taken a life. His wife's life. But he had also been a victim of deceit, of secrets that tore his world apart. The court found him guilty of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. As Daman sat in the courtroom, his sentence handed down, the weight of his actions crashed down on him. What had he done? What had he allowed himself to become? In the end, his life was ruined. Janelle's life was lost. And for what? Secrets. Lies. Love built on deception. Daman's story, and the tragic end to it, serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of keeping secrets, of the dark power that hidden truths can have on relationships. It also reveals the depth of human emotion, how betrayal and anger can cloud reason and lead to irreversible consequences. Janelle's secret, buried deep inside her, was the catalyst for a tragedy that no one could have predicted. A marriage, built on love, crumbled under the weight of a past that could never be forgotten. In the end, the truth came out, but at a terrible cost. And for Daman, that truth would haunt him for the rest of his life. As we close the chapter on this tragic story, let's take a moment to reflect on the key takeaways from this case. Trust. It's the foundation of any relationship, especially a marriage. When trust is broken, when lies are uncovered, the emotional toll can be unbearable. But it's not just about the act of betrayal itself. It's about the secrets, the things left unsaid, the hidden truths that can poison even the strongest bond. Janelle's decision to keep her past hidden, to live under a false identity, set the stage for a storm that no one could have predicted. If she had been honest from the beginning, if she had revealed her truth to Daman, would things have turned out differently? Could they have worked through the issues together, as partners, without the crushing weight of deception between them? The answer remains uncertain. What's clear, however, is that the lie Janelle told wasn't just about her past, it was about her future, and it was a lie that Daman would never have expected. In Daman's mind, his entire life with her, his love, his trust, had all been built on a lie. And when the truth was revealed, when the shocking truth about Janelle's past came to light, it sent him into a rage so powerful, so uncontrollable, that it consumed him entirely. But was his reaction justified? Was the rage he felt a natural response to the feeling of betrayal, or was it a tragic overreaction? Could he have walked away from the confrontation, taken a step back, and processed his emotions? Or did the betrayal cut so deep, so fundamentally, that it drove him to an act of irreversible violence? We can't say for sure. But one thing is certain, the consequences of his actions will haunt him for the rest of his life. This case, like so many others, serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers of secrets, of the darkness that can lurk just beneath the surface of even the most loving relationships. Secrets breed distrust. They create distance. And when they are exposed, the fallout can be devastating. Could Janelle have been more honest with Daman? Could she have saved both of their lives, both of their futures? What if Daman had walked away? What if he had taken a breath, processed his emotions, and sought help rather than resorting to violence? The tragedy of this case is that there will never be answers to these questions. What could have been doesn't matter now. What remains is a broken man, a lost woman, and a life destroyed by a series of decisions that led to the inevitable. Now, we turn the question to you. What do you think about this case? Was Daman's reaction justified, or was this a tragic overreaction? Could there have been another way for him to handle the situation, or was his rage too deep to control? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective on this shocking and heartbreaking case. And if you found this story compelling, don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling true crime stories. There are countless other cases just waiting to be uncovered, analyzed, and discussed. Thank you for watching.